Good morning, good evening, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you might be doing. We wish to welcome you to the Silverlight Show. The Silverlight shines to illuminate that which lies hidden in darkness. For those of you tuning in today, we welcome you in. Genesis 18. I think I'm going to stick to just doing 18 and 19 individually because these are a long read, and again, there's a lot of detail that's included in them. So without further ado, let's jump into chapter 18 and see where it decides to take us. Chapter 18. The Lord appeared to him by the terebinths of Mamre. He was sitting at the entrance of the tent as the day grew hot. Looking up, he saw 3 men standing near him. As soon as he saw them, he ran from the entrance of the tent to greet them, and bowing to the ground, he said, "My lords, if it please you, do not go past your servant. Let a little water be brought, bathe your feet, and recline under the tree. And let me fetch a morsel of bread that you may refresh yourselves, and then go on, seeing as you have come your servant's way." They replied, "Do as you have said." Abraham hastened to the tent of Sarah and said, "Quick, 3 seahs of choice flour, knead and make cakes." Then Abraham ran to the herd, took a calf, tender and choice, gave it to his servant boy, who hastened to prepare it. He took curds and milk and the calf that had been prepared, and set those before them. And he waited on them under a tree as they ate. They said to him, "Where is your wife Sarah?" And he replied, "There, in the tent." The one said, "I will return to you next year, and your wife Sarah will have a son." Sarah was listening at the entrance of the tent which was behind him. Now Abraham and Sarah were old and advanced in years. Sarah had stopped having the periods of women. And Sarah laughed to herself, saying, "Now that I am withered, am I to have enjoyment with my husband so old?" Then the Lord said to Abraham, "Why did Sarah laugh, saying, 'Shall I in truth bear a child old as I am? Is there anything too wondrous for the Lord? I shall return to you at this time next year, and Sarah will have a son." Sarah lied, saying, "I did not laugh," for she was frightened. But he replied, "You did laugh." The men set off from there and looked down towards Sodom, Abraham walking with them to see them off. Now the Lord had said, "Shall I hide from Abraham what I am about to do, since Abraham is to become a great and populous nation, and all the nations of the earth are to bless themselves by him? For I have singled him out that he may instruct his children and his posterity to keep the way of the Lord by doing what is just and right, in order that the Lord may bring out for Abraham what he has promised him." Then the Lord said, "The outrage of Sodom and Gomorrah is so great, and their sin so grave. I will go down to see whether they have acted altogether according to the outcry that has reached me. If not, I will take note." The men went from there to Sodom, while Abraham remained standing before the Lord. Abraham came forward and said, "Will you sweep away the innocent along with the guilty? What if there should be 50 innocent within the city? Will you wipe out the place and not forgive it for the sake of the innocent 50 who are in it? Far be it from you to do such a thing and bring death upon the innocent as well as the guilty, so that innocent and guilty fare alike. Far be it from you. Shall not the judge of the earth deal justly?" And the Lord answered, "If I find within the city of Sodom 50 innocent ones, I will forgive the whole place for their sake." Abraham spoke up, saying, "Here I venture to speak to my Lord, I who am but dust and ashes. What if the 50 innocent should lack 5? Will you destroy the whole city for the want of the 5? And he answered, "I will not destroy if I find 55 there." But he spoke to him again and said, "What if 40 should be found there?" And he answered, "I will not do it for the sake of the 40. And he said, "Let not my Lord be angry if I go on. What if 30 shall be found there?" And he answered, "I will not do it if I find 30 there." And he said, "I venture again to speak to my Lord. What if 20 shall be found there?" And he answered, "I will not destroy for the sake of 20. And he said, let my Lord not be angry if I speak but this last time. What if 10 should be found there?" And he answered, "I will not destroy for the sake of 10. When the Lord had finished speaking to Abraham, he departed, and Abraham returned to his place. Like I said, longer one. But the beauty thing is about longer one is they give us more stuff to look at. So, the chapter starts off with a dramatic introduction. The Lord and a couple of his angels or companions, whatever you want to call them, appears in Abraham's area. There's no easy way to say that, just in his vicinity. But the interesting thing is Abraham goes out of his way to welcome them. There is a culture of hospitality that is something in the modern day we really need to learn to reintegrate into our ways. You should be inviting strangers in and showing them kindness and all that sort of stuff. But what is really interesting here is that Abraham is going above and beyond to show obeisance. He bows down before them. He begs them not to go any further. He tells his wife to immediately start baking cakes and finds the nicest steer in his whole flock and decides to sacrifice it so that they can have a meal. That means whatever form the Lord has taken and his angels have taken, it's obvious who they are. Now, Abraham has talked with the Lord a few times before. That might explain it. But as we're going to see in the next chapter, there's something magical about the Lord and his messengers. Everybody's able to recognize them. They're not questioning, are you God? Which is something that does happen later. No, we have a very personal relationship here. Then there's the whole thing, if it's so obvious who these people are, why does Sarah lie to them? They hear what she said, they repeat what she said, and she lies to them, and God calls her out on it twice. It's very strange for the wife of a man who has been through so many adventures and so much stuff which holy things and numinous things tend to swirl around him. Numinous just means the feeling of holiness. I mean, they've walked into Egypt, they've participated in battles, all in the name of their faith. And this woman somehow still thinks that she can laugh and get away with it. It's not hard to hear laughter. And she's heard this before. So why is it so funny now that the people are here? This would seem to be the last time you would want to lie. But no matter what, it is what it is. And we have another blessing that nations are supposed to come forth from that lineage. Yeah. Standard fare at this point. If you're in the Bible, you get a nation coming from you, and you get a nation coming from you. Everybody gets a nation coming from them. It's great. Then they decide to walk along a path, which nothing unusual with that. If you visit with somebody, you tend to walk them to the front door or whatever the case might be, and that's nothing unusual. A couple of you will walk down the pathway, and like I said, nothing unusual there. Where it does get interesting is God debates whether he's going to tell Abraham about the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. And Abraham is really put out by this, partially because his nephew Lot is there with his wife and 2 daughters, which is 4 people total, but he seems really invested in the fate of Sodom. If you remember, last chapter, he went to war kind of helping out the king of Sodom and Gomorrah. And even though he doesn't like them, he made that very clear. You will not say that you made me rich. I will only take my expenses and that's it. He's not their greatest friend, but Abraham is still negotiating with God, saying, what if there's 50 good people? What if there's 40? What if there's, can you imagine that you actually eat meat? Not eat, that's something else entirely. If you actually meet the creator of all, a divine being that is all-powerful, and you decide to negotiate. It's pretty ballsy. And even at his lowest level, if there's 10 good people, he knows he can only guarantee 4 good people possibly. His nephew, the wife, and the 2 daughters. And we're going to find out probably only his nephew, and even that's debatable. That's going to be a very interesting story to get into. The funny thing is, remember earlier when Abraham and Lot decided to split up and go to different places? When God goes on his mission into Sodom and Gomorrah, it specifically says, when the Lord had finished speaking to Abraham, Abraham remained in his place. Lot decided to take the fertile fields and all that sort of stuff, and Abraham remained in the less desirable part. Let's call it that. We don't know what was desert, whatever was wrong with it, but we know it was less desirable than what Lot was looking at. But Abraham knows not to move. He doesn't try to go and rescue his nephew. He doesn't even send a messenger. He tells everybody, you're staying right here. Because he's been shown the vision of what's going to happen. Or at least if God cannot find 10 worthwhile, good people there. Abraham probably doesn't comprehend it, just as the same way, a person in the 18th century would not be able to comprehend a nuclear bomb. I'm not saying there was a nuclear bomb involved, despite the fact that people who read Zecharia Sitchin might be inclined that way, and I have read Zecharia Sitchin. I'm not going to say he's completely without influence, but his core premise is a little bit sketchy. But for you to be shown a town, and we would have to assume at some point during the past years, decades, that Lot and Abram would have visited each other, probably showed each other around, and just like any other family, when they live within walking distance. So Abram is probably pretty familiar with Sodom. He's seen his son there. He knows the people that are around there. But whatever sin that they are committing, it's pissed God off because their outcry has raised to him. It's reached him. Traditionally, this has been interpreted a number of ways. I'm going to save that for the next chapter because it's a doozy of a one as well. But right now, let's focus strictly on chapter 18. God appears and eats, sits down, has some cakes, has some steak, roast, whatever they decide to make. We don't know, other than he selected a choice heifer, nice cow. And from a modern day perspective, this is a little bit strange because if you just bleed a cow, that takes hours to get the blood out, and then there's all sorts of gutting and stuff involved. Whereas a man of Abraham's status would probably already have something ready to go. So again, we're kind of seeing a very animalistic carnivore side to God. There's the cakes, but it doesn't really dwell much on that, other than the fact that Sarah was asked to prepare them. And they could be like meatloaf that we have today. They might be meat cakes. Interesting little side note, little interlude there, that she's asked to knead and make cakes. All this stuff takes time. So Abraham is just trying to get these holy beings to stay with him. Why? It's a good thing to have holy beings around, and as it turns out, it made God let him in on the plan. With that, I think we've reached the end of this chapter. It's chapter 18's a doozy, like I said. But anyways, we hope you enjoyed this episode of the Silverlight Show. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe. We are not monetized by YouTube, so anything you can do to help us get the message out there is appreciated. We are a critical channel, not a skeptical channel, which means we will investigate, but we're not going to just heartily disbelieve anything. And that's why, if you want to support us, buy a book. It's 99 cents. It's cheaper than Patreon will ever be. Or if you feel like a hardcover, well, not a hardcover, soft cover, those options are available for under $10 as well. No matter what you do, we appreciate you listening to us, and we hope you have a fantastic day.